McLeod. I'm the Assistant Technical Director for North Carolina Youth Soccer. We are excited to be collaborating on this webinar with Florida Youth Soccer and Mark Godwin, the Assistant Director of Coaching, to bring you tonight's webinar. We are joined by Micah Kurtz of the Athlete Maker, who will be discussing strength training in soccer to meet all players where they are. Micah, how are you doing?
I'm great. I appreciate you guys having me on for sure.
Thank you for joining us. You want to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I definitely thank you. Thank you, Jamie, for putting this together. I run my own training company called the Athlete Maker LLC, and then I'm also the Director of Strength and Conditioning at Windermere Prep School in Orlando, Florida, where I work with all of these sports, obviously including men's and women's soccer. And just in my third year down here, and before that, I was at AC Flora High School in Columbia, South Carolina for 9 years. We're in the same role, working with all of the sports and all of the athletes, and had the great privilege and opportunity to work with Jamie when he was the women's soccer coach at AC Flora in the first few years that I was there. And so definitely excited to catch up with Jamie and make connections with all of you. And obviously I have ties to South Carolina, which is very close to North Carolina. And then also now being down here in Florida, excited to make connections with the Florida soccer organizations. And then before I was at AC Florida, I was actually a graduate assistant strength coach at the University of South Carolina, where one of the main teams that I worked with was both the men's and the women's soccer program. So excited to be a part of this. I'm gonna go over about 30 to 40 minutes of my thoughts on age-appropriate strength and conditioning and off-season strength and conditioning for soccer athletes, and then opening it up for some questions and some dialogue. So I appreciate it. I got all of my information here. I'm active on Twitter and Instagram. Definitely would love to continue the conversation and stay in touch for any questions and any connections that come about. And then there's my website as well. I'll have more of my information as we go. So this is something that I think, obviously, whether you're a strength coach or a soccer coach or any sport coach, like this is something that definitely molds the way that I coach, and it's something that I think about every single day. One coach will impact more young people in a year than most people do in a lifetime, and that's something that I don't take for granted. And so every time I get a chance to work with our athletes, you can make a positive or a negative impact on their lives. And so that's definitely something that I think we all need to think about. I think about all the time is trying to make a positive impact that's going to go well beyond their playing days and their time playing their sport, and make a positive lifelong impact on their life. That's gonna, as we all know, sports are bigger than just wins and losses. And so the ability that we have as coaches is tremendous, and something that we all shouldn't take lightly. And I definitely don't take lightly. The objectives of this presentation, I want to go over the core values that I go into when designing my strength and speed and conditioning programs, go over some great injury reduction assessments that are very simple and then also very easy to take to your team and implement. And obviously, we want to get our athletes to be faster and stronger and better in their sport. But also we want to make them more resilient, because if they're injured and not on the field, then they're really not going to be able to help your team or help themselves at all. Go into a little bit about how I break down my training programs according to age, and then hopefully give you some ideas to take to your team to implement. So the core values in our strength program, we have 5 core values. Number 1 core value in everything we do, no matter what sport they do, we want to protect them. We want to prevent them from getting injured. So obviously, if they're in high school, if they're older and they're with me in the weight room, I want to do everything in my power in my program to prevent them from getting injured in the weight room, but also in my programming, I want to implement some stuff that's going to prevent them from getting injured, hopefully on the field of play as well. Number two, I want them to move well, especially with working with a wide range of ages. They have to have good mobility, good stability, good fundamental movement patterns before they progress in our strength and conditioning program. And that's something big, especially when you're working with high school athletes, is as soon as they get in high school and think that they're going to be working out, they want to get under the bar and lift as much weight as possible. But before they do that, we want to make sure they have good movement patterns and good mobility and good stability. We don't want to add a load to an athlete that has a dysfunctional movement pattern. So that's big with our young athletes, which I'll talk about more, is teaching them the proper fundamental movement patterns before they progress. And hopefully if they've been with us for a long time, they're going to very easily progress to the weight room because they'll already have had good movement patterns. And then with our older athletes, if they're starting with us at a later age, we want to make sure we explain to them that they have to be able to move properly before adding load to them. Number three, especially with the ages that we work with, whether it's middle school or younger or high school, they all need to develop a strength base. It doesn't matter if they play soccer, golf, football, basketball. None of them are anywhere near their peak fundamental strength base. So if they get stronger, it doesn't matter what sport they're going to play. They're going to be more explosive. They're going to be faster. They're going to improve in their sport of play. And something that I talk about a lot is the stronger athlete is the more durable athlete. And so we talk about protecting them from getting injured. We've had a lot of success with our athletes when I worked with Jamie at AC Flora and now with my athletes at Windermere Prep, is we have not had, we're really, knock on wood again, at Windermere Prep in the 3 years that we've been there, we have not had a major knee injury. And I'll talk about later some of the injury reduction assessments that we have, but we all know ACL injuries are very prevalent in the sport of soccer, and especially with the female athletes. But I think one of the reasons that it's more prevalent with female athletes is they don't lift weights like guys. And so they're not as strong, and that can be predispose them to injuries. And so we want to talk to them about lifting weights all year long and talk to them about the stronger athlete is the more durable athlete. And as you get stronger, it's going to help reduce from getting injured. Number four, everything we do in our strength program, we want them to move fast. We're always going to incorporate some type of straight line, linear speed development, and then obviously some change of direction, agility improvements as well, obviously, especially for the sport of soccer. And then number five is listed last. It's definitely not last. I want to use my position as a strength coach, and I think we all should use this position as in the coaching profession to lead, inspire, and develop young men and women of character. And I talk all the time about embracing the process of being the best at getting better. And we talk about that all the time in the weight room. And if every single time you come in the weight room and try and get a little bit better, is going to lead to great results over time. And it's going to carry over to everything you do in life. Whether you go home and try and be a little bit better brother or sister, or son or daughter, as you get older, every day you try and become a little bit better employee or a little bit better boss or a little bit better husband or wife. It's going to lead you to success in your life. And that's something that I think you can really instill in sports and especially in a strength and conditioning program. So those are our 5 core values. I think if you're working with a team as far as in their strength and conditioning, whether you're the sport coach that's doing strength and conditioning or you're just a strength and conditioning coach, you should have core values that you can explain to your athletes, to the parents of the athletes, to any administrators that you work with as well, and explain the why behind what you're doing. So assessing our athletes. If you're a strength coach or running a strength and conditioning program, we all assess our athletes in some type of strength, speed, and power assessments. These are some of the ones that we do. Bench press, squat, vertical, broad jump, 5, 10, 5 shuttle with our soccer athletes. We do some conditioning tests. I'm not saying these are the tests that you need to do, but because if you assess your athletes in whether conditioning, speed, agility, power. If you assess them, it's going to make it matters to them. That's what makes it important to them. And what I've learned is, like what I said, what gets measured matters. And so we test our athletes in conditioning tests or strength or speed tests. And because we do that, it matters to them. But we as coaches also understand the importance of injury reduction assessments, in having good core strength and recovery and hydration and sleep and nutrition. We reach to our athletes about that, but do we measure our athletes in that? And when I looked at my program a few years ago, I was like, no, I don't really measure my athletes in the ability to decelerate or absorb force. I don't measure them in their core strength. I don't measure them in how much they slept the night before. And I was like, because I'm talking to them about it, I don't know if it really matters as much to them if I'm not measuring it. So we added in some stuff that I'll talk about briefly, that measuring them on those things. So the functional movement screen, which I'll go over, we do part of the functional movement screen, which tests them in their core strength. And if they fail the test, it means they have inadequate core strength. And we all know the best athletes have the strongest core. If you have a weak core, you're not going to be able to change directions as easily, and you're also going to be at risk for injury. And especially in the sport of soccer, with a lot of rotation and twisting and kicking and turning, it's a lot on the core, and it's a lot on the spine. And I'm sure we've all had athletes that have had some type of back injuries from that rotation, and a lot of it can be prevented if they have a strong core. The ACL hop and stop test measures the difference in the ability to absorb force between your right and left leg, and the difference in the ability to produce force in your right and left leg. And if you have a asymmetry, a difference between those legs of greater than 10%, you're over 2.5 times more likely for a major knee injury. And these are some of the things I'll talk about briefly, but it's some stuff that we can talk about more in future webinars. But these are ways that you can screen them on some injury reduction assessments. And because you're doing that, hopefully you're going to reduce injuries, but it's also going to matter more to them about what you're doing. Again, do we measure sleep, nutrition, hydration, stress, recovery? When I looked at my programs, I was like, no, I don't really do that. I talk to them about it, but do I measure it? And I said, no, I don't. And because I'm not measuring it, does it really matter as much to them? So some of the things that we do, we use a software system called Kinduct, but you can also use Google Forms. You can use Team Builder, if you ever heard of that. Some of those things are very easy ways to take surveys. And I send out a survey to my athletes every morning that they rate themselves. You'll see here on the left on how many hours they slept the night before, how many bottles of water they drank the day before, how big of a breakfast they had, the number of meals they had the day before, what their academic and personal stress level and what their energy level is. And they'll rate themselves on that every day. And then I can see over here on the right their scores. And if they're in the red, I can click on it and see what they scored bad on. And then I can maybe have an additional conversation with them and see what's going on in their life. Because we all know the importance of sleep. We all know the importance of hydration. And if an athlete's really bought in, they're going to be bought into that. But sometimes there's things going on when they're not with you that you don't know about. And it's a way to open up additional conversations with them and see what's going on in their lives. And we've had a lot of success with our athletes being more hydrated and sleeping more. And obviously they can lie on these surveys, but if you have a good trust level, and we're not punishing them if they score bad on it, but it's a way for you to measure it. And it's more in the front of their head every day by filling out these surveys. And I've had a lot of success where I've had parents come up to me and be like, hey, thank you for what you talked to my son about drinking water. I've been telling him about the importance of drinking water for the last 14 years, and he never did. He was drinking soda every day, and now he's carrying around a gallon jug of water every day. And I was like, well, I probably didn't tell him much different than you did, but because we're measuring it, it's maybe a little bit more in the front of his head, And because we're measuring it, matters more to them. And so that's something that's easy to get them to see the importance of some of those recovery things that we as coaches all talk to our athletes about. The ACL hop and stop test. And hopefully Jamie's going to invite me on again in the future. We've talked about doing more episodes of these. And so this is something that I could do a whole presentation on, but like I talked about, you do 3 hops, just jumping on your right leg, just measuring the distance of how far you can jump on your right leg, 3 jumping on your left leg, seeing how far you can jump on your left leg, and then 3 leap tests, which is jumping from your right to left leg and sticking the landing, and 3 jumping from your other leg and sticking the landing. And what it measures is the ability to produce force and the ability to absorb force. And then it gives you a symmetry score as well. And you'll see down here, 78 to 80% of ACL injuries are non-contact. Females are 4 to 6 times more likely to suffer an ACL injury. And then it says an asymmetry of greater than 10 to 15% in either lower body strength between your right and left leg, or the ability to absorb force between your right and left leg, increases the risk of ACL injury 2.6 times. So our soccer players and our basketball players are the ones that are the most asymmetrical. Due to the nature of their sport, soccer players, they're left-footed, they're kicking more with their left leg, that left leg gets stronger, and they have that asymmetry. That puts them at risk for injury. Basketball players, jumping off one foot more often than the other leg, one leg gets stronger than the other. That puts them at risk for injury. And so we can do this test and then address it through our strength and conditioning program if they have that asymmetry. And so that's something that it's very easily done. I can definitely very easily show it, but it's a way to measure some injury reduction assessments. Push-up stability test. This is another very easy test that measures core strength. And if an athlete has a weak core, they're at risk for injury. And so we can do this test, and if they fail the push-up stability test, then we can add additional core strengthening exercises to their program. And
lie face down with arms
a
extended overhead.
very brief video. Basically, all it is a push-up. For women, for girls, they put their thumbs at chin height. For guys, they put it at temple height. So it's a little bit of an awkward push-up, and it's just one push-up, and you're looking for their body to come up in a straight line. If their core and their hips and shoulders can come up in a straight line, they have adequate core strength. If they cannot do that, where you'll see her do it in this next one, which you'll see a lot of your athletes come up like this, where they cannot brace their core and come up in a straight line, they've failed the push-up stability test. And that, they have a weak core and they need additional core strengthening exercises. Very easy test to be done. And then additionally, there's a clearing test with it, where they just come up in upward facing dog, a yoga pose, and you just ask them if they have any pain. They have any pain down there? I'm not a physical therapist. I refer them to our physical therapist or our athletic trainer and say, hey, you should get this checked out. This may be something that you need to get checked out. It's a way to protect the athlete for sure. And then if you're a strength and conditioning coach, where a lot of times the weight room gets blamed for injuries, even if a doctor's never been in your weight room, it's a way to protect yourself if you're working with your athletes in the weight room. So that's some of the injury reduction assessments. Getting into some of our programming. We start our athletes all the way down to 11 years old, and we call it FASST, Future Athlete Speed and Strength Training. And the goals of our FAST program is to empower young athletes to become better at everything. Number one, we want to teach them how to load or decelerate properly. We want to all of our young athletes have weak cores. So we really work on their core stability and also work on their mobility, work on their core strength. Again, they're little, young athletes. We're not worried about, they're barely touching a weight. If they are, it's a light dumbbell or a med ball. We want to teach them movement technique, and then we want to teach them intensity and how to work hard. And the theme, so I'm at Windermere Prep School, which is a K through 12 campus. And so when these young athletes, whether they're in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, coming to me on the other side of the campus where the weight room is, the middle school and lower school on the other side of the campus, when they come to my side of campus, I talk to them about the coaching triangle: accountability, responsibility, and non-judgmental. Say, when you come over to me, you're not a little kid. You're not a middle schooler. I'm going to treat you like you're a young adult. I'm going to treat you like you're a high schooler. And I expect you to act like that. I want you to be accountable for your actions, responsible for your actions. And a lot of them respect that, and they get excited. They're like, hey, he's treating me like I'm a high school kid. And they have great accountability and responsibility. If you're going to miss a workout, I want you to email me or message me on social media or tell me personally you're going to miss the next workout. I don't want your mom or dad telling me. I want you to be accountable and responsible for your actions. And then the third one is I want it to be a non-judgmental environment, especially with young athletes, young kids. One 12-year-old might be at a completely different developmental puberty level than another 12-year-old. I don't care who's the fastest. I don't care who's the strongest. I don't care who's the biggest. It's a non-judgmental, and everybody's just focusing on themselves becoming the best at getting better. I respect the ones that are working hard. I don't care how big or strong you are, because I've seen it over the years, as we all have, that little 13-year-old that didn't hit puberty, that works hard, overcomes a lot of older 13-year-olds that hit puberty earlier and might not work as hard. So we're not worried. It's a non-judgmental. We want to see who's working the hardest, not who's the biggest or strongest. Our dynamic movement prep. This is something we hammer into our young kids, and we call it dynamic movement prep. It is technically our warm-up, but we call it dynamic movement prep because if done properly, you're going to do stuff you'll see we have different categories: glute activation, dynamic mobility, lower body strength, lower body speed, injury reduction and force absorption, and the ability to react to accelerate. So this is almost like the workout before the workout, and I hammer into them. This is not a warm-up. If done properly, you're going to get more flexible, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get faster, you're going to do stuff to reduce injuries, and you're going to become a better athlete. And I think it's big that when our athletes hear warm-up, they think, well, it's just time. This is just the warm-up before practice or the warm-up before the workout. Let's just go through the motions and relax. No, this is not a warm-up. This is dynamic movement prep, and we're training to be better athletes. And we do this with all of our teams, definitely with our soccer team. We do it before workouts with me, and they do it before games and before practices. We modify it according to if it's a game or a practice, but everything we do is we do stuff out of all of these categories. We don't do all of these every single day. Again, this is just an overview tonight. This is another presentation that I can give. I mean, this is another thing that I can give a whole hour-long presentation on. And just a little video on just some of the stuff. This is, we incorporates the ability to land properly, quick feet, flexibility. I got all this information on my website as well. Lower body power, lower body strength. We call these ACL jumps, teaching them how to land properly, absorb force. Again, land properly, absorb force. All of that stuff is huge. I'm sure all of you are, if you want more information on mine, I think mine is great. I think this is great as well. I would definitely recommend, obviously very, very soccer specific, the FIFA 11 plus warm up. I would encourage us to have a specific warm up or dynamic movement prep for our athletes where we get away from just static stretching or going through the motions. It's get into our athletes to understand the importance of everything we do in our practice or in our workout. Everything has a purpose. Nothing is just to waste time to go through the motions. So with our young athletes, big focus on core hip strength, dynamic movement prep. We hammer into them. The squat exercise is the foundation of our strength and conditioning program. If you want to run fast, jump high, be explosive, be durable, the squat exercise is the #1 exercise. So we hammer in with our young athlete, body weight squats, eccentric, where they're going down slow for the squat, isometric hold squats. All that can be done with not even touching a weight, and they're going to get a lot stronger and a lot more durable. Wall squats is a great exercise teaching the athletes how to squat properly. It's not wall squats where you're sitting against the wall. You're actually facing the wall. I have a video that I'll show you in a minute. Some of these other exercises, we want to teach them how to land properly, which is going to help with injury reduction, change of direction, sprint technique. And last but not least, I want it to be a place where we work hard and we compete and we become better athletes. But I also want it to be, especially working with young athletes, I want them to enjoy coming to workouts. I want them to enjoy coming to the weight room. I want them to enjoy trying to get better as an athlete. So I want to make it a place that they enjoy coming to as well. Wall squats. These are something we do with all of our athletes, whether they're 18 years old and been with me for 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, 7 years, or if they've been with me, or if they're only 11 years old and they're just starting. It teaches them how to push their knees apart, how to push their butt back, how to load properly in the squat. So basically, you'll see all it is, whoops, let me go back here. All it is he's facing the wall and he has to push his butt back and push his knees apart in order to do a proper squat. New athletes, tight athletes, athletes with not good ankle mobility or hip mobility won't be able to push their knees apart. Athletes that cannot load their glutes and hamstrings will not be able to sit back. And so this teaches them how to do it. You'll see he has a spotter behind him. When they first do it, they're going to fall backwards. So he can put his hand right behind his back and help him from falling backwards. And as they get better, they can do it without a spotter. This is something you can do with your athletes of any age. One of the best exercises to teach them proper movement in the squat. And a lot of the soccer athletes, same as a lot of our basketball athletes, soccer, basketball, sports like that are very, very anterior dominated, meaning lots of quick starts and stops, lots of quick jumps. By the nature of their sport, they start to build up their quads and they don't have adequate hamstring or glute strength. And if their quads get a lot stronger than their hamstrings or glutes, they're more at risk for injury. So in my strength program, I know a lot of them have stronger quads just from the nature of their sport. So in my strength program, I want to do stuff that's going to target their hamstrings and glutes to even out that asymmetry. This is one of the great exercises that can help identify if they have an asymmetry. Core training, like I said, if you have a weak core, you are at risk for injury, especially in a sport like soccer with a lot of rotation. We train the core in 7 different areas: anti-rotation, anti-extension, anti-lateral flexion, stabilization. Power, obviously, is extremely important from the core in soccer. The posterior core, meaning the back of the core, and we talk about the core, goes from their abs, their lower, the top of their rib cage down in the front, and then in the back, from the middle of their back all the way down to their hamstrings and glutes. We incorporate that as part of the core as well. So again, like I talked about, a lot of them have stronger quads and hamstrings. So in a strength program, you want to target, working with a soccer athlete, you want to really target their glutes and their hamstrings. So some great exercises for their posterior core. Just hip thrusters, hip raises, which you can do anywhere, not even in a weight room. We start them out with 2-leg and I can just say up and they hold it there. Then they can go to single leg, holding it there as long as I want. And with your young athletes, I've seen a lot of our young athletes that can't get their hips in the air. And when they hold it there for 2, 3, 4 seconds, they start cramping up in their hamstrings. They've never really used their hamstrings. This really hammers their hamstrings and their glutes. This is a little bit of a progression. Using a bench makes it a little more difficult. And then as you move into the weight room, you can even make it more difficult, adding an exterior load, adding a weight to it. So that's some great exercises that really targets the hamstrings and the glutes to balance out that asymmetry. USCs, we call these USCs just because when I was at University of South Carolina, which if you're from North Carolina, I'm sure you know that University of South Carolina, we refer to ourselves as USC, even though everybody else in the country refers to the University of Southern Cal as USC, but South Carolinians refer to USC as USC. But anyways, we call these USCs. They're basically just poor man's glute hams done with a partner holding their feet. They control it on the way down. They control it on the way down, use their hands as little as they need to, and pull up. Great exercise for the hamstrings as well. These are huge for soccer players. These are in the FIFA 11 warm-up, but something that's very easily implemented in your dynamic movement prep, aka warm-up that you do in the field, and something that we implement a ton in our strength and conditioning programs as well. So that's what we do with our young athletes, our 11 to 13-year-olds, 14 years old and up. This is what we call the weight room the lab. This is welcome to the lab. This is when we introduce them to the weight room, introduce them to the lab. We had a lot of success at AC Flora. We've had a lot of success at Windermere Prep even before I got there, where we talk about, hey, you need to protect the culture. This is a culture of winning. The guys and girls teams that have come before you, they built that culture of winning and championships. You guys are the future. You guys need to protect it. And so it puts a little bit of a buy-in and emphasis on what we're doing, where it's like, hey, these guys that came before you built something, don't mess it up. Don't mess it up. Protect the culture that was built. So with these athletes, again, we stress teamwork, accountability. Technique is the biggest thing. This is our barbell 101. They're coming to the weight room. They're at the end of their 8th grade or 9th grade year. We're getting them to the weight room. Again, we don't care how strong they are, how much weight they lift. We want them to have good technique and teach them the progressions in the weight room. So we teach these lists of exercises in order. Again, we'll start with the push-up stability test to test their core strength, hip raises, which we talked about, lunges, squats. And we talk with our squats, we go from air squats to goblet squats, holding a dumbbell or kettlebell, to single leg squats with their foot behind them, and then to front squats with the barbell. And then moving on into some more difficult lifts like the Romanian deadlift, dumbbell deadlifts, and then even some of our Olympic derivatives, the hang high flow, hang clean, push jerk. But we don't rush and teach them all at once. We teach a new one each week, and we bring our 8th graders over. In the end of the year, and then teach a new exercise every single week, and add on each week. Squat progressions, again, like I talked about, the squat is the number one exercise, the foundation of our strength and conditioning program. And if you can squat properly and get stronger in the squat, you're going to get faster, stronger, more explosive, better in any sport that you play. And so we teach by just teaching the body weight squat first, then moving to a dumbbell squat, then moving to a front squat with the bar on the front of their shoulders. The reason we do the front squat first is because you have to be in a good body position in order to front squat. If you lean forward, the bar is going to fall off the front of your shoulders. You can lean forward by doing a back squat, but it's not a safe position and you're going to put yourself at risk for injury. And again, like we talked about, the number one core value of our strength program is to protect the athlete. So you'll see we start our kids all the way down to 11 years old. Nobody back squats until February of their 9th grade year at the earliest. Plenty of them have been at a proper developmental age or movement levels before then, but we just do that because we focus on slow cooking our athletes. We don't need to rush the process. They're still going to get plenty stronger doing dumbbell squats or front squats. We don't want to rush them into doing back squats. And the earliest they'll do it is 9th grade of their freshman year. Obviously, if they start in February of their freshman year, obviously, if they start with us later, or if they're brand new and they're in 10th grade, we're not going to just throw them into back squat. They need to still go through the progress and show good movement competency in all of those exercises. And the stronger athlete is the more durable athlete. We hammer that into our athletes, and our athletes do a great job in buying into being strong and being involved in our strength program all year long. Getting into some of our off-season strength and conditioning programming. We lift and run 3 days a week. Some of our athletes come Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Some come Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. This is in the off season, and they'll do their lifting and running at the same time. Generally, sessions last between 75 to 90 minutes, and that's including all of their speed, agility, and weight room work. For the weight room, for the lifting, it always starts with an Olympic style explosive exercise. It doesn't have to be a full clean or a full split jerk or clean and jerk. It can be a derivative of one of those that's just getting them into that triple extension explosiveness. Day one is upper body focus. They're all total body workouts, but day one is upper body focus, and then incorporate some explosive lower body movements, some of our jumps and our lightweight explosive movements for the lower body. Day two is lower body focus, but it's all single leg movements, which is huge for any sport, but especially soccer players. The sports are played on one leg. Running and changing direction is on one leg. So we really want to focus on teaching them to be strong and stable on one leg. And then day three is our combo day. That is our heavier lower body day, where with our older athletes, we will barbell squat them and deadlift them. This is in the off season. We save that heavy day for day three. And the reason why we save that heavy day for the last day of the week, big squat day is the last day of the week, because we want, like I said, they do speed or agility every day as well in our workouts, and we want them to be fast all week long. We don't want them to squat heavy with us on Monday, and then on Tuesday is our change of direction agility day, and their legs are dead, they're heavy, they're tired from heavy squat. And then I'm like, why are you guys not being explosive and changing directions quickly? Well, I just squatted them heavy and they're sore. So we save our heavy lower body day for the last day of the week, and then they have all weekend to recover. So our speed and agility, day one is our straight line linear speed work. And we really stress to our athletes, in order to be fast, you must train fast. So I say, this is not conditioning work. This is not conditioning work. We're going to run sprints, but you're going to have plenty of time to recover between each sprint. So every sprint should be 100% maximum effort. If you want to get faster, run fast. Don't go 3/4 speed. I'm going to give you time to recover between each sprint. We test our athletes in the 10, the 40, and the 60-yard dash, and then we group our athletes for our sprint groups according to their 10-yard dash time. And so it's cool. Some of your athletes that may not be as fast, but they are explosive and have a good 10-yard sprint, they're in that first group, and they get excited about that for sure. And when we match them up according. So if we have 30 athletes in our group, the top 10 fastest 10-yard dash times are in the first group. So they're competing against each other. The next 10 are in the second group. So they're all at similar speed levels. So it's easy for them to compete a little bit better. And we all we challenge, there's challenges, there's difficulties with running sprints. Not every athlete's not always going to run every sprint full speed like we want them to do. But if you want to get your athletes to run faster, put somebody behind them and chase them. So we'll add in some competitions where they're chasing each other. If they get tagged, they got push-ups. And you're always going to run faster when you got somebody behind you chasing you. So it makes it breaks up some of the monotony, and they're chasing each other. It makes it a little more exciting for sure. So you want them to run fast, put somebody behind them. Day 2 is our change of direction, agility, and plyometrics day. We talk a lot about edges and angles. Soccer, all these sports is a big change of direction, agility. I know in the beginning when I was a young coach, and definitely when I was an athlete, I was never taught how to change direction properly. It was just like, hey, you need to be quicker changing direction. We break down our change of direction where we really talk about edges and angles. So some of the drills that we'll do is just teaching them how to decelerate properly. Sprint out, break down, decelerate in a good body position. This is big for injury prevention, but also teaching them how to decelerate, and it's going to translate into the sport they play. So we'll do, and then edges and angles, you'll see right there. Let me go to right there. We have them stop and feel. We want their shin angles going back that way, their upper body, their core going back that way because they're getting ready to change directions to go back the other way. And then we also want, that's what we talk about angles, and we talk about edges. They should feel the weight on the inside foot of this foot and the outside edge of the other foot. So we really just teach them where they learn proper edges and angles, and then we put it all together as they progress, teaching them how to decelerate and change direction and feel proper body positions. And I think a lot of coaches, especially me, when I was younger, I just threw them in drills and didn't teach them proper edges and angles and body positions. And then we'll have them change directions and then have to react and decelerate when the other athlete moves. And so now we're adding a little bit of reactive agility into it as well. So that's some of the easy stuff that we do. That's really very sports specific as well, in teaching them how to feel that proper body position. And then we'll add in a lot of these drills for agility and change of direction. Jump rope is one of the best things for anybody, especially young athletes as well. And then our third day of the week, that's when you can incorporate some type of game-like conditioning if it's getting close to the season, or some type of sport-specific gameplay where you could involve a ball or something that makes it a little more sport-specific, where they see, hey, how this is going to correlate to the sport that we play. Like I said, I think I went a little bit over time. I mean, not overtime for the whole webinar, but I wanted to definitely give time for everybody to ask questions. It was a lot of information, I know. I'm excited to connect with all of you. Appreciate Jamie and North Carolina Soccer Association, Florida Soccer Association. I hope to make this every month, there's a couple months thing, and we can expand on a lot of these topics. Here's all of my information. Definitely would love to continue the conversation. I think Jamie's going to send this webinar. I can send my slides as well, but feel free to send me a text, send me an email, follow me on social media, and we can continue the conversation. But I'll open it up to Jamie and anybody that has any questions after this.
Micah, thank you for that presentation. A lot of great information. I know I have a page of notes from what I heard. And for those of you that aren't incorporating strength and conditioning to what you do now, I can definitely speak to Micah and what he does. When I first got to AC Florida High School, the year before I was there, they had 3 ACL injuries in one season. And my first year we had 1 ACL, and then the next 4 years we had 0. And I am a firm believer that it's all because of what Micah was doing with them off the field. And I say off the field because I would literally take them to the lab and drop them off and let him take over. Micah, for coaches, especially club coaches, it's difficult to find time to work on fitness at training. So can you speak to how much time we should be spending at training? If we have an hour and a half, 2 or 3 times a week, right? How much time should we be spending at training on strength and conditioning and fitness? And then what is the importance of that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we talked about the further importance, obviously the number one thing is keeping your kids healthy and keeping them on the field. And if they're injured, obviously they're gonna be depressed. They're not gonna be playing the sport they love, and obviously they're not gonna be helping the club or the team as well. So I think the biggest thing with strength and conditioning is protecting them and keeping them durable and keeping them on the field. And there's so much stuff that you can do even if you're not in a weight room, and even if you don't have that much time, just to get them a little bit of a strength base and get them a strength base and teaching them how to land properly and absorb force and decelerate properly, which is injuries occur on the landing, injuries occur on the change of direction. And so just teaching them some of that stuff is huge. And so if you're pressed for time and if you're doing it as part of your practice time, I mean, I think 15 to 30 minutes at most is all that's needed. And definitely my dynamic movement prep or the FIFA 11 warm up, that incorporates a ton of soccer specific strength, speed, and injury reduction. And so I think that's, if you're not doing something like that as part of your warm up, and you're just using your warm up as just kind of a time to, like, the kids to relax and hang out and stretch, I think that's definitely obviously doing a disservice to your team and to your kids, but also is not using your time very efficiently. I think every minute of the practice, every minute of the time can be used for to benefit. And so I think I've obviously already alluded to that static stretching, especially at the beginning of a workout, is kind of pointless. And I think there's a lot that you can do if you're incorporating that. There's a lot that you can do for some body weight strength and speed and power and dynamic movement prep that can really benefit your athletes in the long run, for sure.
All right. Another question that came in, Micah, is at what age should I start strength training or fitness with my players?
Yeah, that's a great question that we get all the time. And really, you're never too young to start strength training. And it's just, there's that taboo that when people think of strength training, they think about, oh, well, that's lifting weights. No, strength training, there's so much that you can do without even touching a weight, teaching them the proper fundamental movement patterns, teaching them how to get into a body weight squat, hold a body weight squat, teaching them how to jump and land properly, teaching a proper lunge, a proper push-up, a proper hip raise, a proper hip thrust, all the ab and core exercises. That's strength training, and that can be done at as low as 5 years old. Now, when you have to differentiate at that is the attention spans. And so, I mean, if you're going to be incorporating some fundamental movement patterns and strength training with your really, really young clubs, I mean, maybe that only needs to be 5 to 10 minutes at the most, but it's still strength training and just teaching them how to move properly. And it continually hammers over them over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years. In my opinion, it's gonna set them up to be more successful and be further advanced than those kids that are waiting to start until they're 11 years old or 14 years old or 15-year-olds. But as far as strength training, you can start at any age. As far as the weight room, we really don't start incorporating our athletes into the weight room until the end of their 8th grade year, where that's when they're getting a barbell in their hand. Our younger athletes, our FAST athletes that are our 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, they're going to start to incorporate some type of external loads if they're involved with us, whether it's a med ball or a light dumbbell. But they're really not going to be loading their spine at all. They're not touching a barbell, if that makes sense.
Awesome. And now I believe Mark had a question.
Yeah, Jamie. First of all, thank you, Jamie and Micah, for putting this on and including Florida Youth Soccer Association in this. Hopefully it'll be the first of many. But the question I have is to do with recovery and coming back from an injury. You know, sometimes as coaches, we have a tendency to push the envelope a little bit and bring our players back from an injury too soon. A lot of that comes from the parents, obviously, and the players themselves. But is there a sort of general rule of thumb going forward, a procedure that you should follow to get these players back going? I know it's going to be injury specific, but is there some sort of general information you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think we as coaches, we all know, like, it's to be a great coach, you need to be able to connect with all of your athletes and figure out what makes them tick and develop a trust level, a real trust level with your athletes. And so if you develop that trust level with that athletes, then that can open up that open conversations where you can really see and have that trust level and understand how the athlete is feeling. And I err on the side of caution, and I urge everybody to err on the side of caution. If an athlete is saying, hey, this hurts, I mean, you can't just be like a lot of us were coached when we were young and say, well, you're just being soft, suck it up. I mean, I think it's definitely err on the side of caution and develop that trust level with the athletes. And if they say something's bothering them, whether you believe it or not, I think it's better to err on the side of caution. I think something that's big is that ACL hop and stop test, which, again, a lot of injuries, especially in the sport of soccer, are lower body injuries. And if you do a baseline assessment with them when they're healthy, and you can see how far their right leg jump is, how far their left leg jump is, how far their right to left leap test is, how far their left to right leap test is, and they're coming back from a lower body injury, say on their right leg, and you're seeing that it's still nowhere near what it was on their baseline test, then you kind of know, hey, they're not ready to come back. They're still not at 100%. So I think a baseline test like that would be great, but the biggest thing is just developing that relationship and that trust level with all parties involved, where we all are on the same page that we want the best for the athlete and obviously the best for the team.
So Micah, for those that are interested in using the Kinduct software, what are some obstacles that you see with your athletes when trying to get them to fill out that information?
As far as obstacles, I mean, not really any obstacles where they can do it on their computer. They get an email sent to them. They can also do it on their phone where they get a text message sent to them. So there's really no excuse. I can see who's done it before they come. And obviously if they forgot to do it or just didn't do it, it's listed on there right then. And as they're coming to practice or coming to the workout, hey, you need to fill out your survey. And it takes, I mean, you saw it, it's 6 questions and it takes 30 seconds at most. So they can do it before practice, right as they show up to practice or as at the workout as well. Obviously, as far as an obstacle there, I mean, there's always that issue where they can just make up whatever they want. And again, that comes down to developing that trust level and that relationship with your athletes. And hopefully if they all know that the reason you're doing this, I'm not punishing them if they only slept 2 hours the night before. I'm not punishing them if they didn't drink any water the day before. but it's a way for me to continue to have conversations with them and say, what's going on? And it's a way, I mean, if you have some of your athletes that are your most bought in athletes and do a great job in the weight room, do a great job at practice, they're very bought into the sport, into soccer, and say 3 days in a row they come back and they only slept 3 hours a day, and you're like, hey, what's going on? You know the importance of recovery, you know the importance of sleep, and then a lot of times it opens up other conversations that you don't know, and they're like, hey, my mom and dad are getting divorced. Like, I got this thing going on at home, and that's a way to just make a bigger connection with your athletes and make a bigger impact on their lives. And so I think that's something that's been huge for it. And then also, obviously, we as coaches know some of our athletes that are not our most bought in athletes and don't do the best job. Like, they may not be, I don't think everything that they put down on their survey, you're going to take 100% literally as the truth. I mean, if every single day they're putting down their energy level as a 1 and hoping that that means it's going to be an easier workout, you understand who the athlete is that's putting down the 1. If it's your athlete that's extremely bought in, that says, hey, I got no energy, then maybe you can look at your practice plan and your workout and say, well, maybe I need to modify it because our team's worn out. But if it's one of your lazier kids that's always putting a 1, you're like, all right, well, I'm just gonna, that's just what he or she does. Like, so that's kind of the art of coaching. There's the science of coaching where all this analytics and surveys are coming in, but there's also the art of coaching where you as the coach need to understand what each athlete is, where their individual makeup is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Micah, I've got another question, and it's kind of based from a soccer coaching perspective. Certainly, you know, we all like to have speed in our players. And I like the data collection that you got there on the 10-yard dash and how you group the players or your athletes together from their actual times on that. But my question is, having gone through the program, did you see much fluctuation in the groupings that you had, or was it pretty constant?
No, there's decent amount of fluctuation, and it's cool. Like, obviously a 10-yard dash is, I mean, it's very explosive. It's very much on the start. And I mean, we just do it on hand timers, the stopwatch out, so it's not as accurate. So there is fluctuation, but it really fuels their competitiveness. And nobody wants to be in the third group. Nobody wants to be in a group behind a kid that they swear they're faster than. And so it's another way, like something that we also do is before, say we got our 3 groups and we're doing our workout for our speed day is we're going to run 8 30-yard dashes. Before we even start that group, before we even start that workout for the day, some days I'll be like, hey, we can have call outs. If you're in the second group and you think you're faster than somebody in the first group, call them out and we'll run a sprint right now, just you 2. If the person in the second group beats the person in the first group, then you bump them back into the second group and you're in the first group for the day. And so it adds a little bit of excitement and competition to the sprint training for sure. And it's a way nobody wants to be in the last group and nobody wants to be somebody that they swear they're faster than. They don't want them to be grouped ahead of them. So it's cool for sure.
Great. Thanks.
So Micah, that is all the questions that I have. I would like to thank you for your time and for your presentation tonight, and thank you to Mark for doing this with us and Florida Youth Soccer for collaborating with us on this. Micah, I greatly appreciate how you incorporated the core values and how we as coaches have the opportunity to inspire and make an impact on the players, and the importance of getting to know your players and positively affecting a child's life. I think that goes a long way, and that's something that we can all do and can strive to do, whether we're doing strength and conditioning, fitness, or coaching soccer or any other sport. So thank you for your approach to what you do, and thank you for your time tonight. And thank you to everyone else for spending their evening with us.
Definitely, I appreciate it, Jamie. I appreciate it, Mark. I appreciate all you guys for spending the evening with me, and look forward to connecting with you all in the future.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.